So the name of this opening I have never tried pronouncing before, but I'll give it a shot. It's the giuoco piano game, giuoco pianissimo Italian Four Knights variation. So that's the one that we're going to be playing here, which starts off with typical e4, e5, then knight c3, matching that on the black side with knight c6, bringing out the bishop and the other knight. So this move here is just to prevent him from sacrificing his knight the next move after I bring out my other knight, which after a few exchanges, I can show you how that variation goes. So he captures, I recapture, brings out his pawn, I'd be forced to trade. It would end up like this. So to avoid that, I just brought up my pawn, then brings out his other bishop, bring out my knight finally, and this is the end of the theory. This is what that opening position looks like at the end of it, where I am ready to castle. I have my pieces nice and developed. He also has pieces nice and developed. We're pretty symmetrical. I am just one turn ahead, of course, so white has a bit of an advantage in this position. And now we can just continue. It's kind of normal. I put up my pawns to kick his bishop off the square, to get him moving, let me develop a little bit. I've also got my pawns threatening if he castles this side, so force him to castle king side. If he does castle queen side, I can just keep pushing up my pawns and hopefully get a checkmate, or at least make his king vulnerable. So here now he's threatening my knight. I've got two options. I can either capture with my knight or defend with my bishop. Now, there's kind of a third option. I can also put my queen up, which I don't usually like to put my queen in there. Also, I could just move this guy out of the way, but then leaves my rook exposed, so that'd be a bad move. Engine wanted me to capture. I didn't want to quite yet, because I wanted to have the bishop pair diagonal, since I'm kind of making him castle king side. Now, I capture. I was expecting him to either recapture with the pawn, at which time I would just put my knight up to d5 and fork his knight and queen. But he decided to capture with his knight, so I continued the same way. Now, after a little exchange, he wants to kick me off. I go back to that nice a2 square. Now I've got this nice diagonal threatening that valuable f7 pawn, which is protecting his king. Now he comes up for an attack. If he captures that, then I won't be able to castle and I'll have to retreat. I'll also lose some value. If I decide to castle, that would be a very bad move, because now he could just take that pawn with his bishop. I would have to sacrifice my rook if I didn't want to have him doing g2 checkmate next turn. So I wasn't going to do that. Instead, I decided to move my g2 pawn to g3. Now this defends against this attack and still lets me castle. Now he decides to open up the board a little bit. Engine wanted me to capture the knight first. I decided to just threaten the queen first, because I don't really like that queen there. And so trade queens and end up capturing the knight anyways. And now this diagonal is looking even better, since he moved that valuable f7 pawn. So now he can't even castle on that side. And if he decides to castle on queen side, I've still got these pawns that are ready to move up. So he actually decides not to castle ever by moving his king forward one space. I assume he was doing this so he could double stack his pawns and just get a bit of a better defensive structure. This move I really like doing. So there's this valuable move in chess called capturing en passant, which just means to move after a pawn moves two spaces to be in line with a pawn of an opposite color. You can capture diagonally by moving behind them, which is what my opponent ended up doing here. Now, I wanted him to do that because now I've got this nice open file after I capture the pawn. and I can bring in my other rook and have double stacked rooks on this file. Or if he doesn't capture, then I've got a nice, strong defensive position which he's not going to be able to break through, and I'll be able to move up on the queen side. So he ends up capturing. I take back. He predictably puts his rook in the way there to threaten that same file, to give me a bit of competition over it. So I move in my other rook. Now I've got a nice line here. And now this was the move that the computer really liked when I made it. So the obvious thing you see is you're being threatened by the bishop. You should run away. But there's some other alternatives. You could trade rooks. And of course, if he decides to take this rook, you get two, you only lose one, so he wouldn't do that. If he recaptures, you can just capture again with your other rook, and once again, it's an equal trade. But I saw this move, and this is quite nice, because if he captures, I can bring up my other rook, still threatening his king, and I've got my bishop defending it. So I've got a nicely placed rook. Now he captures, I retake, and after he moves out of the way, now I have all the pawns that I want to take. So I go take that one first. He comes in to threaten me. I'll just take the other one. Now I'm up 2 pawns and have slightly better positioning. So this is a pretty good winning position for white. Now this move, I was thinking, like, how am I going to get him off of that square so I can move my rook over here at some point in time and start threatening these other pawns? But he decided to move it for me. So I moved up my my rook, ready to take those other pawns, expecting him to move in to defend them, which he did. Now, the engine wanted me to try to trade bishops, but I think my bishop's a little stronger than his right now, so I didn't really want to trade. Even though being late in the game, it's usually best to trade, makes you up a little bit more. But yeah, I kind of liked that bishop positioning, so I was hoping that I could use it to trade rooks later, which I ended up getting pretty lucky with right here. So I threatened the, so looking back here, I just had to move forward to threaten the king. He's going to have to run away because he can't move his rook in the way. Or he could, of course, move his bishop in the way over there, but then bishop e6, and it'll get a little complicated for him. He'll lose a lot more, or he'll have to trade a lot more pieces. So I threaten the king. He moves away. And now I get to offer up that trade and get a nice control of that F file again. So he had it locked down. I put my rook to F7. And all of a sudden, he's trapped. If he stays there, I'm taking a rook for free. He kind of has to trade, so he doesn't let me have control of that F file. Now, kind of standard once again, another great move. So from here, he wanted to try capturing my pawns. He was going to move here next. So putting the bishop in there, he is stopped completely. He can't move anywhere. You'll have to start moving up some pawns and give me a positional advantage and let me take some pieces. So he does. I get to capture. Is that, and I did that. So now I've got this nice strong center, or this nice strong line. He won't be able to break through very easily. If he does decide to bring up a pawn, I can just trade. So I'm feeling pretty safe. Now, a couple moves later, he's giving me a pass pawn. This was really nice when he decided to come and move over to c3, because now, here I go. I've got a nice open A file. I can get the pass pawn. My only concern was his bishop. So he can move here, at which time I can't move forward anymore without having to just give up my pawn. So I had an alternative. I could move in my bishop next turn, which I did. And now, if I move this up, he's going to have to trade or I'm getting a queen. So He noticed that. I'm surprised he didn't resign. I ended up just capturing the pawn, and so we trade. I get his bishop. Now I can just defend the pawn. He's going to threaten it, and he was already protected by the bishop as well. So now he goes to threaten the bishop, hoping to get an easy one. But nope, now it is protected, and now he will not be able to make that budge. I can capture that pawn quite easily, and I've got two pawns that I can get all the way to the end. So now this is the position where he resigned. At this time, I had made a bunch of pre-moves, just getting my pawn all the way up and getting ready to get a queen so I can force him into a checkmate. That's how this game ended. I'll see you on the next one.